Hey everybody, Matt Barton here with this week's Broker Minute or Two, and what a week it has been. If you weren't paying attention, we had some really big industry news in regards to a multiple billion-dollar lawsuit that was at least temporarily settled, or not settled, but ruled on. And a lot of questions about that. And just let me tell you, we will be setting out a separate video on this that will give you a little more detail. But if you want to know more about this in great detail, come to our sales meetings. We are covering them. We covered one today in our Union Park office for our central area. We will be covering the same thing tomorrow in our sales meeting in the northern area, and we will do the same thing down in our southern area shortly. Okay. Having said that, one of the advantages of belonging to Gold Nation is all the additional training that they provide. And I don't know why this went back, so I'm going to go back one. Gold Nation actually had Jack Miller, who's the president and CEO of T360, on their MEC broadcast, which they do periodically, and it was great information. It actually came out before this court case was ruled. If you need a calming voice and influence in your life in regards to this issue, I would suggest you click on the link that I will include this week to go watch this broadcast. Okay. All right. What I wanted to talk to you about today was something that we kind of take for granted, and that is, if I can get the right screen up here, there we go. It's in our REPC. Title insurance. And I think a lot of us just blow out, title insurance, blah, blah, blah. And we don't understand how to better serve our clients. So first of all, let's just paint with a broad brush. In our purchase contract, it says that the seller is going to provide a particular insurance policy to the buyer in regards to title related issues. And it's also important, I'm not going to cover it today, but this section 6.1 talking about having fee title, kind of important. If you don't understand what fee title is, we'll cover that in the future. But it also does say in this section 6.1 that the buyer already contractually agrees to accept title to the property subject to the contents of the commitment for title insurance. Did you catch that? They're contractually agreeing. What happens if we're not doing our job and we don't actually get the commitment for title insurance? And make sure the other side doesn't provide, they haven't provided it to us and we don't track it down. There's some challenges there because it is a key piece of the contract. But assuming they are delivering it, what is actually being committed to, right? The seller, right? And it talks about at settlement, the seller agrees to pay for and cause to be issued in the favor of, meaning the buyer is going to be named as the beneficiary of this insurance policy. What are they providing? A title through, by the way, it must be through a title insurance agency, title company, and they will be known in the future in this contract as the issuing agent. And they're going to provide an Alta homeowner's policy. That title is important, right? It means something in the industry, right? And then they go on to say, well, what happens if the issuing agent, the title company who gave the commitment, can't actually deliver on that insurance policy? Well, it says in section A, then the seller agrees to pay for a homeowner's policy through a different title company if the first one can't do it. And the buyer's already agreed to this. Okay. And then section B is if the issuing agent or any other title company can't provide that policy, right? Then the seller agrees to pay for and the buyer agrees to accept the most current version of the owner's policy. Notice it's different than homeowner's policy. What's the difference? The amount of coverage. It's a subset. It's a lesser amount of covered items in the owner's policy. So if we ever got to that place where a homeowner's policy couldn't be issued, everybody's contractually agreed to take a lesser level of protection, both buyer and seller. What's not talked about in this paragraph is that there's also an option for extended coverage, more than the homeowner's policy. It's literally called an extended policy. Now, the cost for that is about 50% more when it comes to the premium. And one of the things insured are boundary line issues and survey related issues. So guess what? Yes, they require a survey to be done as well. So it's a little more costly, and it's probably not important for the lion's share of the contracts that we deal with. But if you have a contract where there's any questions about boundaries and issues and things like that, strongly recommend you have Metro discuss with the clients the benefits of having an extended coverage and work that into your contract. Okay. All right. Now, I wanted to just briefly circle back on something here, and that is what is covered, or more importantly, what is not covered on the default in this contract, which is the homeowner's policy. So I had Barb send over to me just a policy that was on a transaction I actually closed. And, we see these, right? And it's the PR. And thankfully, we have some good agents who actually look through this. Frankly, we have some that are like, oh, well, that's the title company's job. I still think to be a good practitioner, you should know what's going on in here. And in particular, right, there is a lot of boilerplate, right? And this is all information about the property, blah, 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 and a legal description. And we get to the requirements for the policy, and that's in part one. And this is really boilerplate type information. And then we get to section 2. If you do nothing else with your PR, make sure you go down to section 2. I'll get there eventually. Here it is in red, right? And these are the exceptions. In other words, these are the things that are not going to be insured. And on a homeowner's policy, you will always see items 1 through 7, right? We're not going to pay for tax or assessments that are not shown. You can go through this list. I'm not going to read them. And basically, we're going to insure the things that are public record, the things that we can see. If there's things we can't see and you want coverage for that, you better be getting the extended policy, okay? And it pretty much says that down in the bottom at yellow. The printed exceptions 1 through 7 will be deleted if there's an ALTA extended loan policy, okay? All right. So I wanted to finish with this. When somebody brings up the fact that there's 2 insurance policies and this is a racket, please be the voice of sanity in the room, right? Understand that the first policy, everything we've been talking about this morning, is insuring the homeowner, the buyer, right, against certain defects in the property that may arise, okay? The lender's policy is if I'm getting a loan. So if it's a cash deal, pretty much doesn't apply. But if I'm getting a loan, the lender's going to say, great, I'm going to loan you a lot of money. I've got more skin in the game than you do, and I want an insurance policy for me. So the first one, the lender's not named as a beneficiary of the insurance policy. That's why 2 policies are needed, right? The lender wants to be named on their own policy. Interesting thing with this is that it rarely gets invoked unless there's total loss on a property on the lender policy, okay? So if there's a boundary line issue, doesn't typically come into play. I asked Barb about this, and she said, yep, you know what? There was an instance years ago where a property was transacted on with a house, and there was actually an easement through the property that the title company did not catch. And it's legal that somebody has a right of way to use that, and there's a house in the way, which means the house had to be removed, which would be a total loss, which would mean that the lender who had lent a lot of money on this has an insurance policy to recoup their money because the house is no longer there. And if they didn't have an insurance policy, they'd just be out of the money. So the moral of the story today is a lot to know about insurance policies, homeowners policies, owners policies, extended policies. Hopefully you have enough information to guide people, but hopefully part of your guidance is to direct them to the professionals that we have hired and vetted and have years of experience with who know their craft, and get them over to an escrow officer at Metro. That's what I have for you today. Have a great week, and look forward to a extended video email talking about the lawsuit and what it means for us shortly.